Good evening. I welcome everyone who is attending the CME. On behalf of Education Committee of Dr. Agarwal Sai Hospital, it gives an immense pleasure for me to welcome everyone who has logged in and also our panelist, Madam Dr. Hijab Mehta, Madam, and our speaker, Dr. Devi Aishwarya Das. The topic for today's seminar will be on HSV keratitis, the preferred practice pattern and the practical approach. Dr. Hijab Mehta, madam, is our cataract, cornea, and refractive surgeon in Tadio Mumbai branch, and she heads the department over the branch over there. And she is a very good academician. And adding to that, she was the top. She has topped her MS exams during her MS exams, and she is an alumni of LVPI University. And she has published in peer-reviewed journals, and she has participated in more participated and presented in national and international conferences, and she has performed many live surgeries too. And we welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
And Dr. Devi Aishwarya Das is a cataract and cornea and refractive surgeon in Dr. Agarwal Sai Hospital, Cuttack branch and she is also an alumni of Shankar Nethralaya and LVPI Hyderabad. And she has trained and she has a very good experience in eye bagging. And she is a passionate academician and clinician too. And she is the journal editor of the member of the editorial board of Odisha Journal of Ophthalmology. So with this, I introduce myself also. I'm Dr. Sumati and cataract and cornea refractive surgeon in Dr. Agarwal Sai Hospital, Chennai, Porur. And Dr. Devi Aishwardas, ma'am, the podium is all yours. Please take over, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sumati, for that introduction. I picked up this topic because of its practical importance. I hope it helps the postgraduates pick up a point or two. Hope it also helps validate our own practice pattern and makes us think and rethink our strategies. So I thank the clinical board and education committee at the outset. So with this, let me start the presentation. So I'll be talking on HSV keratitis, practice pattern and practical approach. Why I chose the topic is because of its high incidence and prevalence. Globally, the incidence is about 1.5 million per year. Out of this, 40,000 end up with severe visual impairment. As per a recent study in North India, nearly 33% of all keratitis is HSV. As per the LVPA study done in 1997, 7.2% of it was keratitis in South India. However, there's a lack of standardized as well as practical diagnostic modality. And inherently, this is a recurrent disease that can cause ocular morbidity. Hence, it's a diagnostic as well as a therapeutic challenge. No, so I'll be talking about the microbiology, lab diagnosis and its limitations, understanding the pathomechanism and clinical presentation of different subtypes of HSV1 keratitis. The head study, of course, our own preferred practice pattern and how to draw a balance between the ideal and the practical. So now coming to the microbiology per se, it's a double-stranded DNA virus. The hosts are only humans are its hosts. They demonstrate a high tropism for mucoepithelial cells where they cause lysis and neurons where they cause latency. The latency is known to be seen in the trigeminal ganglion and other ganglion, and as was believed previously cornea, which is now questionable. The latency associated transcripts are, of course, RNA that lack the viral DNA. So we can see on the right side, there's a H particle of the heavy particle and the L particle of the light particle. The H particles are the infectious ones, which have a core DNA, whereas the light L particles are the light ones, and the latent particles, they lack the viral DNA within. The reactivation can occur in the ganglia, and now, of course, cornea is not applicable. The trigger can either be a ganglionic trigger, a skin trigger, or a combined trigger. The postulated risk factors are sunlight, fever, stress, menstruation, trauma, heat, trigeminal nerve manipulation, COVID-19 infection and COVID-19 vaccination, and of course, a prior HSV epithelial keratitis. So now coming to the existing laboratory diagnosis modalities that are available. One is the PCR or the polymerase chain reaction. This has a high sensitivity and a very high specificity. However, it is less helpful in immune-mediated stromal and disciform keratitis because there we do not get any live virus. Prior or continuing antivirals reduce the sensitivity of PCR. tear collection and doing a immunofluorescence antibody assay and enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay is also done. This is done with a tear sample. Viral culture is the gold standard. However, its main disadvantage is it takes a long time, up to 2 to 3 weeks. So when we are having any doubt regarding the diagnosis, or we want to take a rethink on the diagnosis, viral culture would not be very ideal. And coming to the sample, corneal scrapings will always show a better yield as compared to the tear sample. And the corneal scrapings of HSV keratitis with Giemsa staining show viral inclusion bodies, and multinucleated giant cells also may be seen. So coming to all these laboratory diagnoses, we know from our practical practice setups that all of them take a lot of time, and all of them are not easily very accessible. So even though some of them may be very ideal, but all of us may not have access. And when we come to the high incidence of viral keratitis, then most of us will be not privy to all these tests. So that is why there's a diagnostic dilemma. Now coming to the HSV-1 infection per se. So there is one HSV-1 and HSV-2. HSV-1 commonly affects the orofacial region. HSV-2 commonly affects the genital region. However, each can affect the other area also. However, in ocular infections, we see mainly HSV-1 infection, and this is spread. The primary infection is spread by direct contact. Blepharoconjunctivitis is more common than corneal involvement in the primary infections. Primary keratitis will usually occur in the childhood. Here, the epithelial variant will be a diffuse punctate keratopathy, and we can give corneal microcysts also. Most of the infection that we see in our common practice is the recurrent variant. Recurrent HSV infection, it can manifest as epithelial variant, stromal, endothelitis, or iridocyclitis. The epithelial variants can be superficial punctate keratitis, a dendrite, a geographic ulcer, a marginal keratitis, or neurotrophic ulcer. The stromal can be immune stromal, which is a non-necrotizing, and or stromal necrotizing, endothelitis, and iridocyclitis. Now coming to the epithelial disease first, we must understand the pathogenesis before we understand how it is to be managed. So this is mainly due to active viral replication in the epithelial cells. In recurrent disease, it can manifest along with stromal keratitis or endothelitis, but epithelial disease primarily is due to active viral replication. It can manifest as the punctate keratitis, a dendritic keratitis, geographic ulcer, marginal keratitis, and neurotrophic keratitis, which can happen in long-standing keratitis or due to mismanagement of the disease per se. So here we see the SPKs. The SPKs are fine and feathery, and they can be distributed throughout the cornea, but mainly they're central. And here we come and see the dendrites, which are fine, dichotomous branching with terminal bulbs. So each one of them is very characteristic. They'll be very fine. We'll see a dichotomous branching, and there will be terminal bulbs at the end. So these are all the terminal bulbs. Bulbs are the all heaped up epithelial cells. Now this is the geographic variant where multiple dendrites can coalesce and form a geographic ulcer, or else it can also arise due to use of steroids in the epithelial stage or in immunocompromised patients. Marginal, again, you'll see, we can very well confuse this with the peripheral ulcerative keratitis. But if you look carefully, even the marginal variant will retain its inherent characteristic. You'll still see the terminal bulbs. You'll still see that it's a fine dendrite. So even though it might mimic a PUK, if you look carefully, you will see all the features of a herpetic lesion. Now coming to the importance of fluorescein and a rose Bengal staining, most of the lesions are visible on the slit lamp. However, fluorescein and a rose Bengal staining will help us confirm or actually study the pattern of the ulcer. Then coming to the differential diagnosis of epithelial keratitis, it can be confused with SPKs of adenoviral keratoconjunctivitis as well as SPKs of microsporidial keratitis. Then the HSV marginal can be confused with the PUK. Then dendrite versus the pseudodendrite that we can see in fungal or contact lens use. And the geographic ulcer and the neurotrophic can be confused with the other microbial keratitis. So now here are some of the slides. The first one you can see are like coarse white SPKs of microsporidia. They look like they're sitting on the cornea. So when you see the SPKs, you'll feel like you could remove them from the cornea, but they're larger and more coarse and they're more white. So these are the SPKs of microsporidia, and they're usually unilateral, can be bilateral, and they're distributed throughout the cornea. And these are, of course, adenoviral keratoconjunctivitis lesions, which you can see in different stages, even in the same patient. Some will be very active and some will be resolution stage. And when they're resolving, you can see that they'll become stain negative, and you'll see that they're subepithelial scarring kind of lesions. And this is, of course, the pseudodendrite. Here you can see that they're dendrites, but they're more coarse, and they're not dichotomously branched like in the herpetic dendrite. They'll take fluorescein throughout. Now, how do we manage the epithelial keratitis? We must remember that the pathomechanism here is due to active viral replication. So we must give antivirals. I'll come to the final treatment in the end. Antivirals, where we use topical antivirals for 2 weeks. The latest guideline says that we can use the topical antivirals in its treatment dose till the epithelial defect heals, and then lower the dosage for another 1 week so as to reduce the toxicity of the topical antivirals, because most of them are epitheliotoxic. Debridement with a cotton tip applicator is also recommended. If you debride, it is said that it reduces the viral load. However, it is contraindicated if there is coexisting conjunctivitis or a neurotrophic component, or if it's a very large geographic ulcer. Adjuvants are also helpful. We must remember that no steroids, because here there is active replication of virus. Now, coming to the neurotrophic keratitis, though this is included in the epithelial keratitis, its management varies greatly with that of the other variants. First, in the first stage, it will start as a punctate keratopathy. Here, what will happen is a patient who has been responding to treatment will suddenly stop responding and start worsening. Or else, in a long-standing keratitis, you will suddenly see that there's a breakdown of the epithelium. Inflammation component also may be less, but the epithelium will break down, and sometimes increases beyond the size of the lesion also. So it will start as a punctate keratopathy. So while you are treating the patient, or if the patient comes to you who is already under treatment, we must look at the surrounding area of the lesions also. Punctate keratopathy give a clue that there might be toxicity to the current medication. So here, in reverse to the other epithelial variants, we must stop all topical antivirals and add profuse lubricants. Then the second stage is that of epithelial defect. That is, epithelial actually breaks down and there is an ulceration. So here we must stop all the epitheliotoxic drops. Earlier we used to have lubricants which had BAC as a preservative. So those cases also you have to stop that kind of lubricant. We must use preservative-free lubricants. We can add a BCL. We can do a tarsorrhaphy. In dire cases, we can go for an AMG also. And if the ulcer progresses, there'll be a lot of collagenolisis. So we must add topical and systemic collagenolitics, and as well as manage the complication. Here you can see that this was a pre-existent ulcer and there was a lot of scarring. The patient was already under treatment for 3 to 4 months. This is recurrent HSV keratitis. And then suddenly he had a worsening of his symptoms. He started watering and his vision started blurring, and then he came to us. There you can see that there's a scarring surrounding it. And here there's a breakdown. It is not a dendrite, it is a breakdown. So here we can see that there's a breakdown. And here, if you see, look carefully, there are filaments here. So these are all evidences that there is toxicity there. So here we must stop the antivirals and we must up the lubricants. Now coming to the stromal variety, the first is the immune stromal. Here the pathogenesis is a type 3 hypersensitivity reaction, where retained viral antigen will trigger the antigen-antibody complement cascade, and precipitation of antigen-antibody complexes can happen. If it happens in a circular pattern, it is called a Vesely ring. Otherwise, we can actually see certain foci of antigen-antibody complexes even within the same lesion. So here we can see these are the immune stromal keratitis. This is like discrete. Here they can be confluent. They can also coexist with an underlying disciform. And here you can see them as they're healing. So as compared to this adenoviral, these can happen anywhere around the cornea, and they are not usually that uniformly distributed. They can be very different from patient to patient. Now, here's one case of recurrent HSV keratitis. What is important is the viral footprints that you see. So they come with keratitis reactivation at different levels. So viral footprints are something that we must look into every case that comes with in every case of keratitis, especially if it has been long-standing with recurrent episodes. So if we just went by this lesion and this vascularization, we could have thought of marginal. But if you actually look at the entire cornea, you will see the viral footprints here. And the other eye also has got telltale signs of viral keratitis. So look for viral footprints and look for ghost vessels also. So they give you an idea about what is the etiology and about the chronicity of the disease also. Now, how do we manage stromal keratitis? We must remember here there is no immune stromal keratitis. Here there is no active viral replication. It is only a hypersensitivity reaction. So we must use topical steroids here. We can cover them with topical or oral antivirals. I'll come to the treatment proper later on. Then topical immunomodulators in those that are unresponsive to steroids or having complications arising out of steroid use. And of course, adjuvants and IUP lowering agents, because some of them can have IUP spikes due to the steroids per se, also due to the associated disciform or endotheliitis if they're coexistent. Now, coming to the second variant, necrotizing stromal disease, here, as vis-a-vis the immune stromal, here there is direct viral invasion, replicating virus and intense post-inflammatory reaction. So here it is both viral invasion as well as a inflammatory reaction. So this is slightly more tricky to treat. Here what we see is that we see necrosis, ulceration, severe stromal infiltration, and an overlying epithelial defect. So this is a variant, this is necrotizing. So you can see there's a lot of collagenolisis. There are thinning in different areas. There is a breakdown of the epithelium, and there is necrosis around. So this is a stromal necrotic. So this is again stromal necrotic. Here you can see the thinning here. If managed well, we can end up, if you're lucky and it is managed well, then we can end up with just a scar. But if it is not treated well, or the inflammation and the thinning goes on relentlessly, we may have to go for a BCL or some other modality to stop the thinning. So how do we manage the stromal necrotic keratitis? It is similar to the immune stromal keratitis. However, antivirals are a must. And the topical corticosteroids must be more gradually tapered because the inflammation is also intense. So here we must strike a balance between the infection as well as the inflammation. Now coming to the herpetic endotheliitis, here the pathogenesis is delayed T-cell mediated hypersensitivity to HSV antigens that within the stroma and endothelial cells, they can be disciform, diffuse, and linear. Most commonly, we see the disciform variety. So what is the disciform variety is relatively well circumscribed. There is absence of leukocytic infiltration. The epithelium will be intact. We may get overlying microcystic edema because of the localized endothelial pump failure there. There will be DM folds. And if we see keratic precipitates, they will be beneath the area of the disciform keratitis, not outside that area of the disciform keratitis. We can also get a deep stromal edema. So this disciform keratitis and endotheliitis can also coexist with stromal keratitis. So here we see this is a disciform keratitis and here is the stromal keratitis. Here we can see in the stromal keratitis focal areas of hyperactivity where their active antigen antibody complexes are being deposited. So management of disciform keratitis is again topical steroids. Cycloplegics must be added because since it is deep, it can be associated with uveitis, and adjuvants like IUP lowering agents, because viral keratouveitis is one entity that is usually associated with high IUPs. So on a case-to-case basis, you have to add the IUP lowering agents. Next part of my talk will be along this line. What is the goal of management? What does the head study say? What is the current practice pattern in India? And what are the recommendations from our microbiology colleagues, and to draw a practical balance between all of them in our own practice. So what is the goal of management? Early recovery, a lower visual morbidity, least toxicity or side effects and complications arising out of medications, and lowering the recurrence, both in terms of frequency as well as severity, and improving the quality of life of the patient. What do we have? What is there in our armamentarium? Topical antiviral drops or ointments, topical steroids, corticosteroids, and systemic antivirals, which could be acyclovir and recently famciclovir and valacyclovir, topical immunomodulators, then surgical or interventional modalities like cyanoacrylate glue with BCL, tarsorrhaphy, penetrating keratoplasty, and amniotic membrane when we have a neurotrophic keratitis. Now, I'll not be going to the details. I'll be just talking the salient points. Antivirals, drugs in topical, we have acyclovir and more recently ganciclovir 0.015%. They inhibit viral DNA synthesis in two ways: by competitive inhibition of DNA polymerase, as well as direct incorporation of the viral primer DNA strand, resulting in its chain termination and preventing their replication. However, we can see resistance to them in mutations that are thymidine kinase deficient, or have an altered thymidine kinase substrate, viral DNA polymerase that is not sensitive to inhibition by acyclovir triphosphate. So now this was about topical. When we come to systemic medication, systemic acyclovir, we give a treatment dose of 400 milligram 5 times daily for 10 days. Prophylactic dose is 400 milligram BD for up to 1 year. Famciclovir and valacyclovir can be used in its place because they have a better bioavailability. However, they have a higher pricing. So we must strike a balance again here. What are the indications for systemic administration of acyclovir? Systemic antiviral, frequent recurrences, vision-threatening conditions like in one-eyed patient, visual axis involvement, around the penetrating keratoplasty perioperative period, and toxicity to topical medication. However, we must use them in caution in renal, hepatic, and neurological disease. So whenever we are putting a patient on systemic antivirals, we must baseline renal function test if the patient is already known to have a disease that can compromise the renal function. And even during the course of treatment of any patient, we must monitor the renal parameters intermittently, the normal guideline. Immunomodulating agents that we have at our disposal are cyclosporin, which lowers the activity of the T cells by binding with cytosolic protein cytophilin. In turn, this complex inhibits calcineurin. This also inhibits the lymphokine production and interleukin release. Tacrolimus is a macrolide calcineurin inhibitor. This reduces interleukin production by the T cells. So both of them act on calcineurin. This first combines with the cyclophilin, and this complex inhibits calcineurin. Tacrolimus is a calcineurin inhibitor. Now coming to the all-important hepatic eye disease study. This was done way back in the US. Now we'll just summarize, and after I summarize the head study, we'll go to analyze the head study in today's perspective. So the first arm of heads that HSV stromal that studied the role of steroids on patients of stromal keratitis who were already on topical trifluridine but not on steroids. So the group 1 was given topical 1% prednisolone acetate vis-a-vis placebo. The ones who were put on steroids showed a faster resolution with steroids. Final visual acuity was same, and also it showed lesser amount of more severe complications. So it also reduced the severity of complications. That is not mentioned here. Then the second part of this studied HSV stromal keratitis who were already on topical trifluridine and prednisolone. They studied the role of oral acyclovir. In addition to that, that showed no added benefit of oral acyclovir. However, in patients of HSV iridocyclitis, oral acyclovir actually showed a reduction in treatment failure when added to topical antiviral and prednisolone. Now coming to the part, there is more agreement on this part too, like HSV epithelial keratitis trial. Here, oral acyclovir was added to patients on topical trifluridine, so it showed no added advantage. So adding systemic antiviral in the stage of epithelial keratitis showed no added advantage. Then HSV acyclovir prevention trial, that is a past history of keratitis within 1 year. Oral acyclovir given twice daily for 1 year showed a 41% reduction in recurrence and a 50% decrease in more severe keratitis. So they recommended giving oral acyclovir as in prophylactic doses to prevent recurrences. Then HSV risk factors studied. Most risk factors were evaluated, but they came to only one conclusive conclusion, that the only proven risk factor is the history of epithelial keratitis. All the other risk factors are just postulation. So this is the only proven risk factor. Now that we have fair idea about the hepatic eye disease study, now let's go and analyze it. What are the points to be noted in head study stromal keratitis arm? Because the second part, most of us are in agreement. In the first arm, what they used was the topical trifluridine 1%, used 4 times daily into 21 days, then 2 times daily till the 70th day. So if you go into the head study, we'll see this is the treatment that was given. Topical acyclovir, now what is the dilemma here? Topical acyclovir is not FDA approved for HSV keratitis in US, so they use topical trifluridine. However, topical trifluridine is not available in India, so we are left with topical acyclovir. They use topical prednisolone as phosphate 1%. which was used in weekly tapering dosage from 8 times daily over 6 weeks, then 0.125% in weekly tapering dosage into 4 weeks, and then 0.125% once daily into 3 weeks, so a total of 13 weeks. So though it is mentioned 10 weeks, it is actually 13 weeks. In India, the more common, prednisolone acetate is more commonly used. So as against phosphate, here the acetate salt is more commonly used. Phosphate ensures better compliance, whereas the acetate has a better penetration and better bioavailability. Now, coming to the Indian scenario, as per a practice pattern showed some important deviations from head study. This was based on response of 47 ophthalmologists, out of whom more than 80% were cornea specialists. So this was done very recently in 2021. This was published in 2021. So what did we see? We saw use of oral antivirals in acute stromal keratitis by 45% consultants. We saw reduced duration of topical steroids, that up to 4 to 6 weeks, most commonly prednisolone acetate by 60% of the consultants. So as against the head study, we saw that oral antivirals were being given in place of topical antivirals in acute stromal keratitis. In place of 10 weeks, at least 10 weeks of topical steroids, here most of our consultants were using steroids for up to 4 to 6 weeks, most common being prednisolone acetate. Now, what is the treatment guideline that is endorsed by our microbiology and immunology group? So they recommend prophylactic oral antivirals in place of topical antivirals in view of their multiple corneal side effects and punctal stenosis and poor corneal penetration. So they recommend oral antivirals. Acyclovir 400 milligram twice daily, valacyclovir 500 mg once daily, or famciclovir 250 milligram twice daily. So this is in the prophylactic dose in stromal keratitis. And they recommend prednisolone 1%. They stay silent on whether it is an acetate or a phosphate. Eye drop started at 6 to 8 times daily dose, tapered over 10 weeks. So they recommended 10 weeks. The rationale behind this, behind their thought for 10 weeks is, if we are using prednisolone phosphate as per the HEADS guideline, then we are continuing it up to 10 weeks. But if we are using prednisolone acetate in place of phosphate, even though we are thinking that we have stopped treatment at 4 to 6 weeks, the phosphate, the acetate residues tend to stay somewhere in the conjunctival fornices, and they keep on releasing some low dose of steroids over a period of time. So we are actually not stopping the steroids at 6 weeks. We are still having some steroid that is flowing in at an untitrated rate for a longer period. So that is why they have recommended that we might as well use steroids for 10 weeks. So this is their guidelines. So now we have to strike a balance in our practice between what is HEADS and what is our preferred practice pattern, and what are the guidelines given by our own ocular microbiology and immunology group. So the AO guidelines say that we can use prednisolone, we can use fluorometholone, we can use remoxalone, we can use difluprednate. So they have widened the topical steroids here. Then topical steroids to be continued after clinical resolution and asymptomatic. How to follow up our patients and when to stop treatment. So during our treatment, we can recourse to fluorometholone or remoxalone or difluprednate, and we can again strike a balance in the duration. We can go up to 10 weeks, but we must remember that we must monitor the intraocular pressure and keep always dilate the patient at intermittent intervals and see the disc. Then topical steroids are to be continued after clinical resolution and asymptomaticity. As soon as the patient becomes asymptomatic, do not stop the topical steroids. You can continue them for a slightly longer period. And the steroids need to be tapered over a prolonged period, sometimes months. Here, the patient must be counseled about regular reviews and symptomatology, also warned about side effects and again self-medication. And follow-up in case of recurrence is to be timed around the previous interval before recurrence. So suppose the patient had the last recurrence at an interval of three months. So our next follow-up should be just before 3 months. So the next follow-up should be around maybe 10 weeks instead of 12 weeks. And in our practice, the cost of treatment and compliance to treatment must be kept in mind. So whenever we are initiating systemic acyclovir or systemic antivirals, we must keep the cost of treatment in mind. Even in prophylactic dosage, acyclovir is cheaper than valacyclovir or famciclovir. Valacyclovir is the costliest. So whenever we are starting the patient with systemic steroids, we must keep the cost of treatment in mind. We must see the socioeconomic status of the patient, and we must strike a balance between what is practical and what is ideal. And we must see the compliance to treatment of the patient. Suppose we are starting a patient on a prophylaxis of systemic acyclovir or systemic antiviral, then we must ensure that the patient is able to complete the treatment. If the patient stops the treatment in 1 month or 6 weeks, then it doesn't make sense putting that patient on systemic prophylaxis. So these are few points that we must consider in our Indian scenario, and then strike a balance between what is recommended and what is to be done. And what are the complications that we might encounter during treatment? One is, again, a recurrence of the epithelial disease over any stromal or disciform lesion, an indolent or a metaherpetic lesion, stromal ulceration and melt, neurotrophic keratitis, secondary glaucoma, complicated cataract, stromal neovascularization, and secondary microbial infection. So these are my references, and I've given some references below the slides also. So these are the books that the postgraduates can actually go into. And thank you. And one point that I missed in my presentation is the corneal sensation. Viral keratitis is most often associated with a diminished corneal sensation. It's very important that neurotrophic keratitis, there is no corneal sensation because of the loss of the subbasal nerve plexus because of recurrent disease.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very excellent presentation with the key points to be noted in each types of HSV keratitis. With this, ma'am, Hijab Mehta, ma'am, can you please give us a few inputs from your side regarding the HSV keratitis, ma'am, and the practice patterns which you would suggest to?
Dr. Devi, very nice comprehensive presentation. In fact, I was just going to just make that little comment that in all cases, whenever you're in doubt, check the corneal sensation is very, very important. So all cases of viral keratitis, corneal, whether it is herpes simplex or zoster, there is going to be a reduction in the corneal sensation and staining. So when you stain in viral keratitis, especially HSV, you will get, even if it's a recurrent HSV, you will still have that geographic pattern. When the epithelium breaks down, many times you will still have the geographic pattern, especially in the necrotizing variety of stromal keratitis. If it is the neurotrophic variety, you will have the typical neurotrophic features, heaped up margins, and there will be hardly any inflammation. There again, the corneal sensations are reduced. And also very important, like when not to use steroids, in all cases of, already Dr. Devi has mentioned, but just to repeat, steroids work like double-edged swords. So in all cases of epithelial keratitis, not to use steroid. And even for necrotizing, somebody just asked a question, how do you know whether it is immune stromal keratitis or it is necrotizing keratitis? So immune stromal keratitis, usually the epithelium will be intact. The epithelium will be intact. The moment the epithelium starts breaking down means there is an active viral replication happening. So then it's moving towards a necrotizing stromal keratitis. So there also you need to be very cautious with topical steroid use. If you are adding a topical steroid, I would honestly in private practice not want to give prednisolone acetate. I would want something like a loteprednol and make sure that you're following up the patient, because the moment the discomfort goes down, the patient may stop following regularly and will come, suddenly you'll see that the patient is come with a corneal melt. Many times till the epithelium heals, I refrain from adding the steroid. I will, if there is too much of underlying inflammation, I may give a low dose oral steroid, that too occasionally, but give topical antivirals whenever the epithelium has broken down, topical lubricants, antiviral, cycloplegics. Once the epithelium starts healing, then you can start off with, a low potency steroid. If you feel that the epithelium is not healing and there is significant underlying inflammation, maybe you can resort to the oral steroid for a short time and then come back to the low potency topical steroid. Then Dr. Preeti, I think, was asking about herpes zoster. To prevent the corneal involvement, there's nothing really topical that you need to give in zoster. In zoster, if you start the antiviral within 72 hours, the dosage for zoster is different from the dosage for
Different.
Yeah, so there it is. I prefer now in our setup, we give valacyclovir 1 gram 3 times a day, because if you tell the patient take 800 milligrams of acyclovir 5 times a day, they may, not take it 5 times. So 1 gram 3 times a day for at least 10 days In fact, I just heard Dr. Sonal Tuli at Kerakon. She mentioned you have to give all zoster patients oral acyclovir for 1 month. I mean, at least we clinically were giving it for 10 days.
2 weeks.
And yeah, so that itself will prevent at least any active viral infection in the cornea. The immune mediated infection is going to occur irrespective, so that you can't help. Oral acyclovir, Dr. Devi has mentioned when to give, but one other indication for oral acyclovir is, for example, if you have a patient whom you are going to do cataract surgery and
Perioperative.
who has a previous history of HSV keratitis and you want to do cataract, so preoperatively you start the acyclovir, whatever acyclovir or valacyclovir, and you continue that for the whole 1 month of the steroid duration. So you don't need to give like 4 times a day, 5 times a day. Even if you give valacyclovir,
Bleeding.
once a day, 500 mg is good enough. Or you give acyclovir 400 mg twice a day for that 1 month duration. Also for HSV marginal keratitis, Dr. Devi spoke. So you will in HSV marginal keratitis, in HSV you will always have some amount of epithelial defect. But if you have this staphylococcal marginal disease where you have these peripheral immune mediated infiltrates, you will see that there is this lucid interval between the infiltrate and the limbus. But in HSV it will be bang at the limbus and there will be some epithelial breakdown. Also the location, the staphylococcal marginal disease will always be at the 2, 4, 8, 10 o'clock where the eyelid margin is going to touch the cornea. But not so with the HSV marginal keratitis, it can be randomly present anywhere. And the spread also of HSV is going to be more if you start adding steroids. You think that this is immune mediated and you give steroid to this patient. Actually, it's contraindicated. In HSV marginal keratitis, you can't give steroid. You need to bring that epithelium down. You'll need to give a topical lubricant along with topical antiviral. And then if the inflammation still persists, you add the steroid. With the steroid, the marginal keratitis starts moving towards the center of the cornea. But in the staphylococcal marginal disease, it won't come to the center of the cornea. You will see that it will start responding to the steroid. And if it's untreated, you will see that it's spreading along the limbus like a PUK kind of a thing and not progressing towards the center.
So exactly, Dr. Hijab, this picture exactly shows that the one that I'm trying to show here.
Yeah.
That exactly shows that because here, if you just looked at this lesion and there's a vessel here and missed out on the rest of the cornea, you could easily confuse it with a staphylococcal or any other marginal keratitis.
Correct.
But if these are the other evidences of HSV, likewise, that other marginal that you were trying to highlight, no?
Correct.
Exactly. This is what.
And also one more differential for HSV epithelial keratitis is going to be recurrent corneal erosion. Or a healing epithelial defect. Many times, recurrent corneal erosion, the patients will keep coming back with these breakdowns and you may mistake it for a viral disease, but actually it's a recurrent erosion. It won't typically have that dendritic pattern or the geographic pattern, but it's a recurrent erosion and patients will give you history of previous trauma or something like that.
Ma'am, in case of marginal keratitis or a differential diagnosis, I mean, like HSV keratitis mimicking as marginal keratitis, we can actually, how do we, like, everybody can start staining. The fluorescent stain gives lot of inputs in those cases. Whenever there is a doubt, like if you just put a fluorescent stain on the patient's cornea, it gives a huge information. Even like as you said, in case of a healing epithelial defect and with a recurrent corneal erosion versus your HSV keratitis, this fluorescent staining gives a lot of information, ma'am. Like can you put some inputs about that too?
No, fluorescent staining, I didn't get that question.
Ma'am, it's like in a case of doubt, like HSV keratitis versus an healing epithelial defect or a marginal keratitis, I mean, like part of HSV keratitis mimicking as a marginal keratitis. In these cases, like how, like fluorescent staining, like how it would.
Fluorescent staining in HSV will be typical. And second thing that will help here is corneal sensation. Very important. Corneal sensation and recurrent corneal erosion and in other than viral cause of epithelial breakdown, the corneal sensations will be they'll be heightened. And here in viral infection, it'll be lower.
Ma'am, there is one question. What do we do if epithelial lesions with AC reactions? Is topical steroids advised then? think, madam, you already explained. Probably you can re-explain, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with epithelial lesions and anterior chamber inflammation, maybe you can give a course of oral steroid short term till the epithelial defect heals. Once the epithelium heals, then you can get back to the steroid. And how long to
And oral acyclovir also, because if
Yeah,
there is uveitis, you'll give oral acyclovir also.
Yes, correct.
There's one question, Dr. Devi, madam, you can answer, like old keratitis, what is the precaution during cataract surgeries or any other like corneal transplants or any cases like with the HSV keratitis as a pre?
You go for a perioperative cover with systemic antivirals, like even Dr. Hijab mentioned, and I also had mentioned. So you go for a perioperative cover. So I would rather start them if the patient has not had any recent recurrence. Only then you will take that patient for surgery when you're taking up for cataract surgery. So you give a remission period of at least 2 to 3 months. And then when you take up the patient for surgery, you give a perioperative, you start the patient off with a prophylactic dose, not a treatment dose, a prophylactic dose. I start maybe 3 days before surgery, and I continue for at least 1 month till the patient is
1
on
month.
3 to BD dosing of steroids. And after that, when I'm reducing the steroids below BD dosing, only then I can stop the coverage.
Do we advise any blood tests for these patients who are on long-term prophylactic oral antivirals?
Serum urea creatinine at baseline if the patient is a known diabetic or any other disease where the patient is expected to have some renal impairment. And or else even normal patients, at 3-month intervals, I go for a renal parameter assay. And for keratoplasty for grafts, I use systemic prophylactic dose for at least 3 months. If it's a PK, then I go for a 3-month coverage with systemic assay.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, Hijab ma'am, there's a question. I'll forward this question to you. How do we counsel a patient who comes with an epithelial lesion which heals but lands subsequently with corneal edema uveitis, like maybe a stromal with keratitis? And is there any evidence this can be prevented, or should we alert them even at initial stages?
Actually, no need to that can happen, but we don't need to alert them that can happen. And it's not that, giving oral acyclovir is going to prevent it or continuing. Basically, if it has to happen, it's going to happen. And
How often do we call the patients for the follow-up? Say, for example, a patient has an epithelial keratitis presence with us. So how often do we call them and how do we stop it? Like what is the time period when we say, okay, we have to stop this medications?
So as soon as 2 weeks, I think maximum for the topical antivirals. We normally see them 2 weeks and then tell them to come back 1 month later just to make sure that all is well and they're doing good. Also, antivirals, I don't think required more than 2 weeks because otherwise then you'll have the toxicity with the antiviral, then the epithelium will start breaking down because of the antiviral. So not more than 2 weeks. And also all cases that come with corneal ulceration, even if you know that this could be viral, if it's resolving with your treatment, very well. But if it's not resolving, then better to scrape because sometimes, they may end up with a secondary infection or it may be something else and not really a viral infection. Even the immune stromal keratitis, because I have seen it in my own hands, that I have missed a microsporidia stromal keratitis, thinking that
Yes.
this is an immune stromal viral keratitis because the epithelium is intact and you're not sure whether corneal sensation, because sometimes the corneal sensation may be unequivocal, you may not be very sure. So and patient responds to the steroid even in microsporidia. So you will have this false sense of improvement. But they keep coming back with the recurrences. So in that case, better to get a corneal scraping done and make sure that you're not missing something.
Yes,
Please
microsporidia is
can
a very
I mention?
confounding factor. Microsporidia is a very confounding organism. So many patients have already been on treatment for HSV keratitis for years together, now being found to be microsporidia.
Correct.
So that is one thing. And the other one is atypical mycobacteria. So that also has to be kept in mind, especially for necrotic variants.
There's one more question, like when do we refer a cornea patient to the cornea department from a non-cornea ophthalmologist when patient has been screened by a non-cornea consultant.
If you're not getting a response in 2 weeks, if you feel it's not responding or worsening with the treatment, then I think you need to take a cornea opinion. What do you think, Dr. Devi?
And there's certain diseases like because of the recurrence, like a VKC or HSV keratitis. So because recurrence is known, I would recommend that they be sent on the first follow-up to the cornea.
Is there any like patients whom really we will look into them and ask for an immunological, like immunocompromised, like what are the clinical pictures which would incite us like to say like, okay, go and get an serological workup to be done, especially in a HSV keratitis patients? Or Devi ma'am or Hijab ma'am, anybody can answer.
If any lesion does not behave the way it is expected to behave, then we must keep those things in mind. Suppose the patient's response is not as expected over a period of time. Sometimes we rethink our strategies, but in spite of everything, if the patient is not behaving the way he is expected to behave, then in those cases we must keep that element of doubt.
Hijab ma'am?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with
yeah,
her.
yeah.
That's true. So there's
Yes.
nothing very typical about HSV. More so, you have this retinitis. For example, somebody who's got a
Those
viral
cases, yes.
viral retinitis and
Or
all.
even a bilateral case.
Yeah, bilateral case, retinitis and all, and maybe you can get that workup done. But
And there's one question like, what is the end point of treatment and when to stop the treatment with topical acyclovir or steroid?
like 3 months, no? Yeah, 3 months you need to keep the treatment on. Most times, at least 3 months.
If the patient has a case of recurrent disease, then you must suppose the patient had a recurrence after 6 weeks of treatment in the last episode. So this time you must give the coverage for a little longer than 6 weeks. And you must call back the patient before the last interval of recurrence. Suppose the patient had a recurrence at 3 months, then this time the patient must be seen a little before 3 months. So that is how I plan my treatment.
And also, like once you are done with the 4 to 6 weeks of prednisolone, you can come down on the steroid. You can give a loteprednol, which has less potency for IOP elevation. You can give that once
I
a day.
start with fluoromethalin. Honestly, I don't use prednisolone at all.
Yeah. So I do use prednisolone depending on the severity. But after 6 weeks, come down on the steroid, loteprednol, and many times I give it once a day. Then third month, I may just give alternate day. So gradually, I tell them take twice a week. Then I tell them take once a week. Keep tapering it because some of them, as soon as the steroid is off, they do come back with the recurrence. And keep them on the oral when you're treating for so long, instead of giving the topical antiviral, better to give them the oral antiviral once a day so that they don't have a recurrence. Because that's another thing that we need to have in mind, that if we are giving topical steroids to all HSV keratitis patients,
We can't.
the risk of recurrence of epithelial disease, meaning the chance of the epithelium breaking down, is high. So you need to definitely cover them with prophylactic dose of antiviral so that they don't come back with the epithelial disease. So as long as the steroid is on, if it's on for 3 months, then definitely 3 months of oral prophylactic dose of acyclovir needs to be on. That is either acyclovir, acivir, whatever, 400 2 times, or you can give valcivir, valacyclovir 500 mg once.
500 once. Any experience on tacrolimus or cyclosporin? Because I tend to use them a lot. Most of my patients are on tacrolimus as I'm tapering the steroids. Recurrent diseases, not the primary.
I
Not
have,
the
for some reason, I'm a little scared of tacrolimus, as in for HSV. I have not given tacrolimus. I have given cyclosporin.
Cyclosporin. I do give cyclosporin. I maintain them twice daily and slowly taper them once daily, and then probably and then I
3
stop
months.
them.
3
Yeah.
months, no?
Yes. Based on the response, like I keep them on twice daily, and then when they come for a follow-up in a month or two, then I reduce it to
Once
one
daily.
time. It's cheaper. Whether if they haven't shown any recurrence, then I'll stop them. Usually, and maintain them only on lubricants. That's what I do. Thank you, ma'am. That was an excellent presentation and followed by a very good discussions and with a very good valuable input from Hijab ma'am. And I thank on behalf of Education Committee too for an excellent discussion today. Thank you, ma'am.